Behind a closed door at St. James's Palace, two of the monarchy's disciplined women made a decision that stunned the royal household. Princess Anne and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, did not raise their voices. They did not summon the press. They approved a new events protocol that ended Queen Camilla's power to control royal ceremonies alone, and by the time she discovered it, the order was already moving through the palace. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne placed a slim red folder on the table and turned it toward Sophie. The document contained a restructuring order, meaning a formal change to how palace responsibilities would be divided. It removed Camilla's unilateral authority to plan, alter, approve, or host major royal events without another senior signature. From that moment, every ceremony would pass through a senior royal events council, a small group created to coordinate official occasions, with Anne leading oversight and Sophie controlling protocol. Sophie read the final page twice. Her face stayed calm, but her hand paused above the paper. She had spent years avoiding open conflict, protecting relationships and smoothing over disputes before they reached the king. Yet she knew why this mattered. Guest placements had changed without warning. Hosting roles had shifted hours before arrivals. Charities had received conflicting instructions. What looked like palace detail could humiliate guests, divide households, and weaken trust in the crown. Anne felt no triumph. She picked up a black pen, signed beneath her name, and said royal occasions belong to the country, not to whichever household moved first. Her anger came from duty, not rivalry. Ceremonial responsibility, the planning of national and royal occasions, could not become personal territory, because every sudden change affected staff, families, veterans, and organizations waiting beyond palace walls. Charles had not been asked to chair the meeting. Anne and Sophie had used a procedural mechanism, a rule allowing senior working royals to recommend operational changes when repeated disputes threatened official engagements. That choice made the move lawful inside palace administration, but emotionally explosive inside the family. Camilla learned only after both signatures had been registered. An aide entered her sitting room carrying the red folder and waited as she reached the sentence declaring that no event plan could be changed without dual authorization. The Queen's expression hardened. She closed the file, rose, and asked whether Anne and Sophie were still inside the palace. Because the order itself was only the surface. Beneath those signatures lay years of strained loyalties, private humiliations, and four people who had begun to see royal duty in dangerously different ways. The confrontation was never about seating charts, receiving lines, or palace invitations. For Anne, it was about discipline. For Sophie, it was about protecting stability. For Camilla, it was about proving that her place beside the king carried command. And behind them stood Catherine, whose growing presence had become the measure against which every decision, gesture, and royal event was now judged. Anne had spent decades treating royal engagements as obligations, never prizes. A royal engagement was an official duty performed on behalf of the crown, and she believed each demanded order, clarity, and respect. Late alterations did more than irritate her. They disrupted staff, embarrassed charities, unsettled military representatives, and punished guests who had built their hopes around promises made in the monarchy's name. Sophie understood that danger well. She had become trusted because she could calm tension without feeding spectacle. Yet her loyalty to Charles required a harder choice. Protecting the king sometimes meant limiting those closest to him, especially when competing instructions left palace employees afraid to obey anyone. One senior coordinator had requested reassignment after receiving contradictory orders hours apart. Catherine became the human proof. During planning for a diplomatic reception, the princess noticed that two guests connected to her charitable work had vanished from the revised list. A diplomatic reception was a formal gathering held for overseas representatives and invited organizations. She asked Sophie carefully, refusing to accuse Camilla, but disappointment tightened every word. Catherine sat beside the trusted confidant and folded the amended list. She said she could accept being moved, shortened, or overlooked, but she could not explain why vulnerable guests invited under the crown's authority had suddenly been discarded. Sophie heard no ambition in her voice. She heard hurt, restraint, and the quiet damage caused when private influence reached people unable to defend themselves. Camilla felt a different wound. After years of judgment, Control over royal events had become proof that she belonged beside Charles, rather than near the edge of his reign. Anne saw ceremony as national duty governed by precedent. The Queen saw it as a way for the king's household to create a warmer monarchy. Both believed they were protecting him, and both stood on a collision course. Camilla studied an old photograph of herself with Charles, and felt anger collapse into sadness. The palace seemed to be telling her she could be accepted, but never trusted. Meanwhile, Anne opened the red folder and touched a handwritten note naming the ceremony when patience ended. And when that ceremony is reconstructed, the secret meeting no longer appears sudden, because one decision made before hundreds of guests had transformed private frustration into a point of no return. Every palace rupture has a moment replayed with painful clarity. For Anne and Sophie, it came during the Commonwealth Service reception, when an approved program was changed less than an hour before the doors opened. One handwritten instruction moved Sophie from the principal receiving line, displaced veterans Anne had invited, and placed Camilla's private guests at the center of the occasion. Sophie had spent weeks coordinating women's organizations and conflict survivor networks. The Commonwealth Service reception was a gathering honoring representatives from the nations linked through the Commonwealth, and every minute had been cleared across the royal households. Anne had arranged for veterans from Canada, Australia, and the Caribbean to be greeted individually. Their names, service records, and positions had been circulated. Sophie entered the reception room and stopped. Her name card had vanished from the central position. A junior courtier handed her a revised program marked with Camilla's initials, his voice unsteady as guests gathered outside. The trusted confidant read it without protest. Restoring the card would delay the event and expose the quarrel, so she stepped into the secondary line and welcomed guests warmly, knowing her invited organizations would receive only seconds. Anne reached the veterans and learned that 12 minutes had become 3. One elderly officer told her that simply being present was honor enough. She thanked him, but her jaw tightened when she saw the Queen Consort's cultural guests guided toward the center. Camilla had gained a warmer, more modern emphasis. Others had paid for it. Anne found Camilla in a side corridor afterward and asked who had authorized the changes. The Queen replied that the reception required a contemporary focus and that adjustments fell within her responsibility. The Princess Royal answered that responsibility without consultation became interference. Neither woman raised her voice, yet both understood that something had broken. Sophie joined Anne later with the discarded program folded inside her handbag. She did not complain about her own removal. She spoke about the veterans, the charities, and the guests whose access had disappeared. Her restraint convinced Anne that this was no personal grievance. It was an institutional failure. Camilla refused to restore the earlier approval system during a recorded follow-up call with Sophie. She insisted that flexibility was essential, and senior status required practical authority. Sophie ended the conversation politely, then documented every alteration. Anne requested records from 6 earlier events and found the same pattern: substituted guests, reordered speeches, displaced relatives, and frightened staff unsure whose command carried weight. But evidence could only justify the decision. It could not spare anyone from the moment when Camilla walked into the room and demanded that Anne defend the order to her face. Camilla entered the room holding the red folder against her chest, and the silence changed immediately. Sophie rose first. Anne remained seated. No aides waited, no secretaries hovered, and no ceremonial smiles softened what followed. The Queen placed the document on the table, looked at the Princess Royal, and said they had not reorganized an office. They had humiliated the king's wife. Camilla closed the door herself and pushed the folder between them. The restructuring order was the document that redistributed control over royal events, and she called it procedure used as a weapon. Her voice stayed low as she asked whether they intended her to discover the loss of authority from an employee. Anne answered that the same channel had been bypassed whenever approved programs were changed without warning. Anne did not apologize. She said private relationships could never override operational responsibility because contradictory instructions endangered staff and damaged promises to guests. Sophie stepped forward and explained that the new system protected every household, including Camilla's, from confusion. When the monarch dismissed that as bureaucratic language, the trusted confidant opened the folder and pointed to 6 dated examples of employees receiving competing commands. Camilla turned toward Sophie. She asked whether years of friendship and public service meant so little that she could sign without speaking first. The Duchess struggled before answering. A conversation, she admitted, would have allowed the same arguments to delay the necessary decision. The Queen removed her reading glasses, folded them carefully, and placed them directly over Sophie's signature. The gesture forced her to face the mark that made the rupture official. Anne leaned forward. She said Camilla remained free to host, advise, and participate, but she could no longer change guest lists, speaking roles, seating plans, or ceremonial assignments alone. The monarchy could not be governed by whoever reached the program last. Camilla struck back. She warned that Charles might see the order as an attack on his household, then asked whether Anne was prepared to force her brother to choose between his sister and his wife. The Princess Royal's composure flickered. Sophie moved quickly, insisting the decision was designed to prevent the king from resolving crises created before events, not to make him choose between people he loved. Camilla reclaimed her glasses but left the folder behind. She told Anne that procedure would not protect either woman from the personal consequences, then closed the door with enough force to rattle the frame on the mantelpiece. The confrontation had exposed the anger, but the true balance of power depended on one man, and Charles was about to receive two radically different accounts of what his family had done in his name. When the red folder reached King Charles, he did not summon anyone immediately. He read the order alone, returned to the first page, and remained at his desk after his private secretary withdrew. The decision cut through his family, yet overturning it would expose something worse. The palace had begun protecting itself from confusion inside his own household. Charles studied the new Events Council, an internal group designed to prevent rival royal offices from issuing conflicting instructions. Anne, the most experienced senior working royal, would oversee ceremonial consistency, while Sophie's office would coordinate charities, overseas delegations, and family participation. Their authority came from an existing coordination framework, not a private seizure of power. Camilla's rank remained untouched. She would retain precedence, the formal order determining who stands or enters first, along with her patronages, public dignity, and assigned hosting duties. What she had lost was sole operational control, the informal power to rewrite a shared royal event without a second approval. Charles reached the Commonwealth reception pages, removed his glasses, and pressed two fingers against his forehead. He recognized Camilla's handwriting beside the disputed changes. The king wanted to defend his wife after everything she had endured, but defending her now risked excusing disorder that had embarrassed guests and frightened staff. William entered only after being summoned. Charles asked whether the Prince of Wales had known about the secret meeting. He admitted that Anne had voiced concerns, but said he had not known the order would be signed that morning. The future king showed no satisfaction. He spoke only of one dependable chain of command. William then produced a documented message from an event coordinator. The employee had received 3 instructions for one state reception, a formal occasion honoring a visiting head of state, one from Camilla's office, one from the king's household, and one from the central ceremonial team. The message asked which order could be ignored without risking dismissal. Charles looked at his son and asked whether he had lost control of his own court. William answered carefully. Control was not the issue. Clarity was. The words hurt because they confirmed that the damage was already visible to the next reign. Charles did not revoke Anne and Sophie's order. He requested a 30-day review but allowed the council to begin immediately, protecting Camilla from instant condemnation while ending her former freedom during the review. He then ordered Sophie to deliver the first revised plan personally. Anne preferred written notice, but the monarch refused. The family could not survive through folders. That plan would make the consequences brutally real, because Camilla was about to see her own name on an event she would attend but no longer command. The first consequence arrived not as a declaration, but as a cream-colored program for the Royal Foundation's summer reception. Camilla's name remained near the top. Her entrance, greeting, and speech were all included. Yet 2 new signatures now occupied the lower corner, where her office once gave final approval. For the first time, the Queen was expected to follow a royal event she had not shaped. Sophie entered Camilla's morning room alone and placed the program on a small table. The Royal Foundation was the charitable organization supporting projects connected to the senior royal family, and its summer reception brought donors, young participants, and established patrons together. Her respectful tone could not soften the intimacy of delivering the Queen's reduced authority by hand. Camilla scanned the guest list before finding her speaking time. Her expression changed when she saw that Catherine would welcome the youth, representatives, while she would receive senior patrons later. The arrangement was practical. Catherine's projects were directly connected to the young guests, and Camilla's experience suited the established organizations. Still, the monarch saw something colder, a future being organized around someone else. Camilla asked whether Catherine had requested the change. Sophie answered firmly that she had not, and that no member of the Wales household had proposed reducing the Queen's role. The assignments followed direct charitable connections, nothing more. Yet facts could not remove the sting. Sophie admitted that she never wanted their relationship to become a chain of permissions, approvals, and objections. Camilla looked at her and replied that she could not sign away someone's authority, then mourn the friendship damaged by the act. The trusted confidant had no answer that did not sound like another defense. Anne faced the same danger elsewhere. During a planning meeting, she noticed staff waiting nervously for her approval and told them the council would not become another private court. Every decision had to be recorded, explained, and shared. Event teams now received one master schedule. Guest substitutions required written reasons, while speaking orders remained fixed within 48 hours unless illness, security, or Charles demanded a change. Camilla tested the system by requesting one longtime friend for the reception luncheon. Sophie checked the available place and approved it. The Queen had not been excluded, but she had been required to ask, and nothing could hide that truth. Camilla remained seated after Sophie left. She drew a line beneath Catherine's role, stopped, folded the program, and asked her secretary to cancel the private celebration planned after the reception. Yet the deepest shift would not come through another program or regulation. It would come when two women finally spoke without files, titles, or allies between them. The turning point came after evening prayers, when Anne found Camilla alone in a narrow corridor at Clarence's house. No aides followed them. No folders were carried. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then the Queen asked the question buried beneath every confrontation. Had Anne ever accepted her, or had she merely waited for the first defensible chance to reduce her place? Anne had arrived to speak with Charles, but the king had been delayed. Clarence's house was his London residence, used for private meetings as well as family life. Camilla asked the Princess Royal to remain, then dismissed the waiting attendant. No secretary would record the exchange. No household whisper would shape it before either woman had finished. Camilla abandoned every institutional defense. Controlling royal events, she admitted, had made her feel useful and secure. After years of entering rooms where people questioned her presence, deciding how those rooms operated became proof that she finally belonged. Losing that control felt like being pushed toward the edge again. Anne answered with difficult honesty. Acceptance had never been simple, but the order was not revenge for old wounds. Her concern began when Camilla's need to prove authority affected veterans, charities, staff, and guests who had played no part in the family's history. Duty, she said, could not become payment for personal pain. Camilla moved toward a chair but remained standing. Anne pulled a second chair from the wall and placed it opposite her. That small movement changed the encounter. They were no longer passing enemies trading accusations. They were two women forced to speak as equals. Camilla finally named her fear. She believed Anne and Sophie were preparing the monarchy to function without her, while Catherine's growing prominence made every reduced role feel like a rehearsal for disappearance. Anne assured her that no council could erase her marriage, rank, or years of service. Yet she would not promise restored authority, because reassurance could not come at the cost of order. Anne then disclosed, through the council's documented drafting record, that Sophie had opposed harsher wording and insisted upon a guaranteed consultative role for the Queen. The revelation unsettled Camilla's belief that the trusted confidant had acted from betrayal. Camilla agreed to attend the summer reception under the approved program and promised not to demand a final alteration. Anne agreed that council decisions would be reviewed openly and never used to diminish her symbolically. Neither apologized. Camilla extended her hand first, and the Princess Royal accepted it. Their handshake remained private, but the consequences did not, and within hours, one palace image and one extraordinary newspaper front page turned their settlement into a national reckoning across the country. By sunrise, the palace decision had escaped the walls that created it. Broadcasters called it a historic redistribution of royal influence. Commentators argued over whether Camilla had been restrained or humiliated, while crowds gathered near Buckingham Palace beneath cameras and raised phones. Then one photograph appeared from the summer reception: Anne, Sophie, Camilla, and Catherine standing together, four composed faces carrying four different truths. The London Chronicle captured the shock first. Its front page carried the headline, "The Queen's Final Say Ends," above an image of Camilla arriving while Anne and Sophie stood behind her studying the approved program. The program was the official running order governing arrivals, speeches, guest meetings, and ceremonial duties. That mattered because whoever controlled it could shape not only the event, but the public importance given to every person inside it. A morning anchor described the change as the greatest reorganization of royal event authority in the modern reign. Camilla remained queen, the broadcaster stressed, but she could no longer control collective ceremonial planning alone. Near the Victoria Memorial, the monument facing Buckingham Palace, one woman held flowers for the monarch and called the decision cruel. Nearby, a military family raised a small sign thanking Anne for protecting duty and precedent. Camilla heard the camera shutters before entering the reception. She gripped the edge of her program, released it, and moved forward with controlled dignity. Catherine welcomed the youth delegation as planned, while the Queen received senior patrons. When their paths crossed, the princess paused and inclined her head warmly. Camilla returned the gesture. The photograph captured no victory and no surrender. Only two women refusing to turn private strain into public hostility. Sophie watched the schedule unfold without confusion. Every charity received its promised time, every guest reached the correct host, and no speaking order changed without warning. Yet the trusted confidant also saw Camilla standing alone between engagements and understood that administrative success could still carry a human cost. For viewers, that smoothness became the evidence. No displaced guests, no confused lines, and no sudden humiliations before the cameras. Anne refused the praise. When a guest thanked her for restoring order, the Princess Royal said the credit belonged to staff who had finally received one clear plan. Her answer mattered, because the council was meant to limit personalities, including her own. Charles then authorized a palace statement confirming that the revised structure had his support and would remain in force for major multi-household events. The king's approval ended the procedural argument. With the event completed and the monarch's verdict public, only one question remained. Not who had won, but what losing power had taught every member of the family. The secret meeting did not end Camilla's place within the monarchy. It ended something more dangerous: the belief that closeness to the sovereign could become unchecked command over the institution. Anne and Sophie had not removed a queen. They had drawn a boundary. And when Charles allowed it to stand, the royal family delivered its clearest verdict: duty would remain greater than pride. Anne watched the 30-day review conclude without celebration. The Events Council, a permanent group coordinating occasions across royal households, would now operate through one approved program, recorded consultation, and shared authorization. Sophie would manage coordination, while the Princess Royal guarded consistency. No office could rewrite guest lists, seating plans, speeches, or ceremonial roles alone. Camilla remained central to royal life. She kept her engagements, patronages, precedents, and a consultative voice in events involving her household. Yet the Queen never regained unilateral authority. At a later reception, she received the final scheduled days early and sent one written suggestion through the council. It was accepted. Losing unchecked control had not made her powerless. It had made her influence accountable and easier to trust. Sophie visited Camilla before that engagement and was invited to sit. Their warmth had not fully returned, but accusation no longer controlled the room. The trusted confidant understood that protecting stability sometimes demanded painful confrontation. The Queen understood something equally difficult. Procedure could prevent fresh wounds, but it could not instantly heal them. Anne handed the chair to Sophie at the council's first permanent meeting. She reminded everyone that authority had to be distributed, because no individual, including herself, should dominate it. Charles later told his sister privately that he hated the method but accepted the result. The king then thanked Camilla for respecting the structure, honoring his wife's restraint and Anne's discipline. Catherine continued the assignments connected to her work and never commented publicly on the lost authority. Her silence mattered. It proved the change was about service, not conquest, and denied the conflict another rival to blame. Anne placed the red folder inside a locked cabinet. The pen rested beside it, no longer a weapon, but a record of the moment private frustration became responsible order. Camilla lost command, yet gained a place that no longer depended on constant proof. Sophie lost neutrality, yet became a guardian of stability. Anne risked family peace. Charles accepted that love could not replace clarity. The meeting began in secrecy, but its meaning became unmistakable. The monarchy survived because they placed the crown above the authority they wanted for themselves. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.